Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for completing the coursework for Unit 1 of 7211. I wanted to go over the data analysis quiz and the results and how to get to the right answers there as we transition towards Week 2 or Unit 2 of the course. So if you look back at the multiple choice quiz that we took, the first question was talking about 60 participants, 30 of which were male, 30 of which were female, being split into three different groups according to school, college, and university. So you had three groups of females and three groups of males, and they were looking at their overall interest in politics. Because we had three or more groups and so on, that was sort of leading us towards an analysis of variance or ANOVA. And because we didn't know which way people would be leaning without any sort of idea in that direction, it wasn't a directional hypothesis, so to speak. So we were looking at more of a two-way ANOVA on that one. The second question had to do with how could a university predict graduation and enrollment from a number of recruitment efforts. And when we think about prediction, we're thinking about regression, and we're thinking about all these factors here and regressing out those factors that didn't lead towards that outcome that they were seeking. The third question was actually coded incorrectly. And so we were talking about a dependent group of people to see if they were going to pass the end of the year test, and if that same group would sort of fare better on the standardized achievement test. Both of those were looking at non-parametric analysis because it said it was measured A through F, so it was not measured numerically, so that led you towards the non-parametric side of things. So you really had to debate whether it was the Mann-Whitney or the Wilcoxon, and because it was a dependent group, meaning the same group here would have the standardized test achievement score there, it was the Wilcoxon. So apologies for coding that incorrectly. I will go ahead and give people credit for that allowance there, no problems. The fourth question was about, there were three groups of 8 students, yada, yada, and we were looking at performance on weekly criterion reference tests and comparing overall group performance and maybe mean gain and things like that. So right there, we were just doing a straight up analysis of variance ANOVA. And the last question was talking about the key word there being the relationship between the number of books checked out and reading performance. And so the best answer for that had to do with Pearson's R, and we're looking for that linear line, looking at the, trying to see if there's a direct correlation between the number of books checked out and reading performance. And the hope, I guess, would probably be that the more books checked out, the greater performance, and seeing if we can get to that 1.0, that linear line relationship there. So that's sort of how that test was, that quiz was set up. It's sort of a starting point. I know some of these ideas were introduced to you last semester. Many of these we're going to review early in this term, but we're also going to build upon those. So I encourage you to look back at the course calendar, see what kinds of topics we're going to cover throughout the semester. Know that this is sort of a starting point and it's not an indicator of how you will do in the rest of the semester as we transition this following week towards more ideas around sampling and instrumentation and demographics, right? So if we think about sampling, that can make the difference between a study that is valid and one that is not valid depending on the conclusions that are drawn. So there are different types of sampling that I talked about in a video and other sorts of materials there. Demographics, we know that this can sort of add a number of dimensions, add a layer of complexity, if you will, to studies that you might be envisioning for your dissertation, to different studies that you read all the time. The government is notorious for collecting different types of demographics, whether it be levels of education, health, levels of poverty, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes in schools, you'll see gender, you'll see socioeconomic status, you'll see political affiliation. All these types of things are different types of demographics. And then the third one is on instrumentation. We're going to get into the ins and outs of trying to make sure that the instruments we use are valid and have been validated through a number of means, or if we're creating them ourselves, how do we go about that process to ensure that we're actually measuring what we intend to measure, and there's sort of a solid foundation and backing for those determinations. So I look forward to working with you this week, and it should be a good one as always. Take care.